All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're looking at Lesson 5-3 on the resurrection of Jesus. I have a quote at the bottom, which is very important. In fact, this is the most important aspect of the Christian faith, as we'll see. Paul says in 1 Corinthians, "If Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is in vain, and your faith is in vain." Everything in Christianity hinges on this event, which is what makes Christianity very unique, because Christianity is a religion that is based on a historical event. So when we talk about the resurrection of Jesus, there's a number of questions we need to ask, and we'll get to those. Christians believe that Jesus was raised from death to an unending bodily life, and that's what we call resurrection, the raising from death to an unending bodily life. So Jesus will not die again. He still has his body even now. And it also means that we'll never find his body in a tomb somewhere here on earth. Non-Christians say that resurrection is not possible. People don't come back from the dead. It's just not something that happens. Of course, the Bible teaches that with God, nothing is impossible. So what we need to look for here is evidence. Because remember, we're not dealing with just some belief. We're dealing here with a historical event. So we can ask questions about it. And these questions will help us, whether you believe or disbelieve, it'll help us come to the truth of the matter. So there are two questions I want to ask. Number one, what happened to Jesus' body? We know from historical records that the tomb that Jesus' body was buried in ended up empty. So that's a historical fact that we have to deal with. Did he resurrect? Was the body stolen? Those are a couple options. Number two, we know, historically speaking, that the apostles, the 11 apostles minus Judas, were going around claiming that he rose from the dead and that they had seen him. So the historical question we ask about that is, were they lying or were they telling the truth? Is there any historical evidence we can use to gauge whether or not they were being honest or not? Now, in answering these two questions, there are different theories that we can come up with that try to explain the fact that A, the body was missing, and B, the apostles were claiming that he rose from the dead. How do we know which theory we should accept as the best or true? When you're dealing with theory, the theory that explains the most amount of data is the theory that should be accepted. So hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the best theory that we had was that the Earth was at the center of the solar system and that the sun went around it. When we collected more scientific data, it became the better theory that no, the sun is at the center of the solar system and the Earth revolves around the sun. So let's look at some theories. The theory we're going to look at is called Christianity. And Christianity believes that, yes, Jesus died on the cross and he rose from the dead. What happened to his body? He rose from the dead. Why did the apostles claim he resurrected? Because he rose from the dead. So this theory takes the apostles at their word. Okay, next theory is hallucination. This theory says, yes, Jesus historically died, but he didn't rise from the dead. The apostles, in their grief, thought they saw him or wanted him to be alive so badly that they convinced themselves that he was really alive again. So this theory would explain why they preached that he was risen from the dead, because they had literally convinced themselves that it was true. But it does not explain why the body was missing. That's where the next theory comes in, conspiracy theory. Yes, Jesus died on the cross, but he didn't rise from the dead. The apostles lied about it. The apostles stole the body out of the tomb, which would explain why the body was missing, and then they lied. And the last theory we'll call swoon. And the idea of the swoon theory is that Jesus did not die on the cross. He merely fainted. And when he was brought to the tomb, he woke up and left. That explains why the apostles thought he resurrected, because they thought he was dead. And that explains why the body was missing, because Jesus left the tomb. In the next slide, I'm going to give you my reasons that I think the best of these theories is Christianity. Arguments for Easter. These are the reasons that I think that the best of the theories is the Christian theory, that Jesus died and rose from the dead, and that's why the apostles preached it. So number one, the only historical witnesses we have to this event unanimously say that Jesus rose from the dead. So the apostles would be those witnesses, and they say that they saw Jesus again. Of course, the question comes up, of course they'd say that. They're Christians, right? How do you know they're not lying? To say that the apostles were trustworthy. And what proves that they're trustworthy? The fact that they were willing to die for their belief that Jesus rose. Peter was crucified upside down. Paul had his head cut off. Stephen was stoned to death. These are not lovely and nice ways to go. Why would they endure these kind of torturous deaths for something that they knew was a lie? Or even worse, something that they had conspired to lie about. In addition, the 11 apostles that were left, minus Judas, were not the only witnesses that we have recorded in the Bible. We hear from Paul that there were, at the time that Paul was writing, 500 unique witnesses who saw Jesus after his death. Did they all lie about it? This would be a very big lie, especially since we do not have any evidence that any of them ever recanted this lie and would give evidence of where the body was hidden or something like that. We don't have any evidence of that, but we do have evidence that they believe that they saw Jesus alive again. What would explain that? The first witnesses that we have describing Jesus' resurrection were women. Why is that interesting? Because 2,000 years ago in Jewish society, women were not allowed to testify in court. Women were considered untrustworthy witnesses. The point is, if I were making up the story about Christianity and I wanted to convince you to believe it 2,000 years ago, if I was lying about it, I would say that the first people to see Jesus again were men, because they would be more trustworthy witnesses. But the Bible says that women were the first ones to witness the story about the resurrection. Why would they put their story that they want us to believe in the viewpoint or from the point of view of the most untrustworthy witnesses? They would only do it because that is what happened. I believe that they are being honest in describing this story. Before the resurrection, in fact, just days before the resurrection, the apostles abandoned Christ. Peter denied even knowing him, and Peter was the head of the apostles. What changed these frightened men from being scared of Romans and Jewish authorities to being bold witnesses, willing to endure crucifixion, beheadings, and stonings? Only a miracle could have changed them from being scared to being completely courageous and death-defying witnesses for Jesus. And these are the reasons that I think that the theory about Christianity, that it really did happen, is the best theory we have. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.